Hey there, my name is Daniel Whidden, and my presentation is on emergency management and culture. For a few years now, I've worked in the field of victim services, and it actually shares a lot of the same aspects as emergency management in that you're dealing with people during a time of crisis. Two of the more common similarities, I guess, are dealing with religious tolerance and cultural sensitivity. To begin, I would like to look at American society. As we all know, America is comprised of many people from many different cultural backgrounds. This is one of the things that makes America so unique, but has also spurred a lot of conflict in our past, and which we all are familiar with. Um, Also, one's religious affiliation or their affiliation with a social cultural group can take precedence over their ethnicity. The term I would like to introduce is ethnocentrism. It is the view that one particular ethnic group is somehow superior to all others. This is usually considered tunnel vision when speaking of culture. In this context, ethnocentrism is the view that a particular ethnic group's system of beliefs and values is morally superior to all others. I'm sure we can all think of some example for that. Sociocentrism is one that I would like to add here as well. Um, it is taking one's own social group as a standard against which others are measured. It's the same definition as ethnocentrism, but dealing with social groups versus ethnicity. Why is ethnocentrism so bad? It leads us to make false assumptions about cultural differences. We are ethnocentric when we use our cultural norms to make generalizations about other people's cultures and customs. It leads us to make premature judgments. Some examples that I found here are when we talk about British drivers driving on the wrong side of the road. Why don't we just say the opposite side or even the left-hand side? Ethnocentrism doesn't always come from the worker's side. Many times it is the victim or the person that needs assistance that will not accept assistance because they themselves are being ethnocentric towards the one trying to help them. So they refuse assistance. We see this quite often, especially during times of great crisis. Cultural relativism is kind of where we want to be in the field of emergency management. Um, it's also considered ethno-relativism. It's the view that individual belief and value systems are culturally relative. That is, no one ethnic group has the right to say that their particular system of beliefs or values, their worldview, is in any way superior to anyone else's system of beliefs and values. What's right for one culture might be wrong for another, and that's fine. There's no absolute standard of right and wrong by which to compare and contrast morally contradictory cultural values. This is what we should strive for, I would say personally, but most definitely professionally. The Binet scale is a psychological scale dealing with cultural sensitivity. It takes us from the ethnocentric stages all the way through to the ethno-relative stages. So basically from the bad to the good, and studies each stage. Denial is basically one is simply not able to understand cultural differences. That is the person who sees somebody that's different and just knows they're different. Um, doesn't understand why. Then there's the defense stage, and they notice the cultural differences and sees these differences as negative because basically because they're different. They're comparing themselves to the other culture. Uh, Minimization is the stage where superficial cultural differences are recognized and accepted. This is looking at another culture and you just accept, well, they are different, but you don't necessarily, you won't look at their point of view, you won't understand it. Um, then you get to the ethno-relative stages. Acceptance is achieved when cultural differences are not only recognized but also accepted as an alternative solution of how to organize human existence. Um, Adaptation, this development of communication skills that enable intercultural communication in order to understand and be understood across cultural boundaries. This is important because it's one that you must use whenever you're in a time of crisis. You're going to see people from many different cultures, and you have to look beneath the skin. You have to see the person that's in crisis, and you have to help them while they're in crisis to get out of crisis. The last stage is integration. It is reached when one manages the internalization of bi or multicultural frames of reference. The one integrated in another culture is seeing oneself as in process. It is not necessarily better than adaptation. What does this have to do with emergency management? Again, it's important when helping a person or a group of people to stay on task, to remain focused on each other. The victim stance is a powerful one. The victim is always morally right, neither responsible nor accountable, and forever entitled to sympathy. This is a very powerful statement, in that the victim never asks to be victimized. They were going about life just like they were supposed to be doing, and yet crisis happens. The constitutional promise to all Americans that they have the right to the pursuit of happiness gives rise to the expectation that Americans are supposed to feel happy. Many times, when a victim is in crisis, they are very confused and very angry. And this is why. They're supposed to be happy. This is what they're taught. And yet, something bad has happened. When you have that and you add cultural insensitivity to the situation, somebody that won't take the time to understand, then it just makes matters worse, and a person can be re-victimized many times over for many years. We must remember that responding to an emergency is very black and white. You have a duty. It is to go in and save people. It's going to take care of a disaster, whether it's pick up trash, create dams, pull people out of floods. But the realm of cultural sensitivity and victimization is very gray. When you are dealing with people, you don't know their backgrounds, you don't know who they are, and yet you have to be sensitive to that, and you have to always be open. It is important for emergency managers and crisis responders to be adequately trained in the area of cultural and social sensitivity. For that very reason, you don't know who you're going to be dealing with, and if you offend somebody, you take a great risk at re-victimizing them. These are some additional resources that I decided to include. The first is the web address for Florida Disaster. It's Florida Emergency Management website. The second is the Attorney General's website that explains the crisis response team. And the third is NOVA, the National Organization for Victim Assistance. And it is actually a training site for the National Crisis Response Team.